Morning, church. Good to be back. I believe the last time I was here was last year. Yeah, last December, before we all scoot off our holidays. So, yep. Okay. Is the slide out? Not yet. Okay, why don't we just commit this time to the Lord first? Come, let's pray. Father, we want to thank you for this beautiful Sunday morning. Thank you that we are able to gather together as a family. Firstly, to worship you. Thank you for your wonderful presence this morning. And Lord, right now, as we sit at your feet, as we get ready to learn from you, I pray firstly for myself that you will anoint me and help me to deliver the message effectively to my brothers and sisters this morning. And I pray for my brothers and sisters that you open up their minds, open up their hearts to receive your word this morning, and that may your word bless them and edify them. So we commit the sermon and we commit the remaining part of the service to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so the title of my sermon is, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. Now, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you read this title? U2? Rock song? Okay, so if you're wondering whether I'm going to be preaching heresy this morning, let me assure you, no, okay? I've chosen to adopt this title because I felt that it was most apt, right, in describing what I want to speak to you about this morning, and then you will know as the sermon unfolds. What I want to talk to you about this morning is about this age-old topic, right? It is about this search for happiness, for fulfillment, for meaning in life, correct? Every one of us is looking for that in some way or another. Some of us may have given up on that, right? But nevertheless, this is something that occupies the hearts and the minds of many people, in fact, of everyone, whether you are a believer or not. Okay. Now, you may be wondering, what has this got to do with Christianity? What has it got to do with my faith, with my journey, as a disciple? Well, I want to say that this is actually a very, very important part of our discipleship journey. All right, it is something that we Christians do not reflect often enough, right? And when I say reflect, I mean not just thinking about what we're chasing. I'm talking about how does that pursuit feature, in our life as a believer. What does the Bible say, about this pursuit for meaning, pursuit for fulfillment, pursuit for happiness in life? And because we don't think often enough, we end up being influenced by worldly philosophical ideas, sometimes without even realizing it, sometimes even thinking that that is actually biblical. All right? In fact, there have been misconceptions even communicated by preachers, by churches, right, about how this pursuit, right, of happiness, of satisfaction in life, how that features in our walk as a Christian. Right? I mentioned this is not something that we talk about too often. Life is busy. We just get on with life, all right? And definitely when you're having a meal with your friends, you don't talk about matters like that unless your friends are philosophers. Favorite topic, philosophers like to talk about meaning of life and all that, right? Okay, so we don't talk about that enough. We don't think about that enough. And then we don't hear enough teachings about that. The consequence of that is we end up having distorted views, distorted applications of the Bible. Let me give you one example. The Bible actually says nothing about pursuing the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment, meaning as our primary objective in life. Do you know that? The Bible says nothing about that. But yet you hear so many teachings and you have so many Christians believing that God will help us achieve our dreams. God will help us achieve the goals that we set out, to achieve. God is going to make us rich. God is going to make us happy. God is going to make us this and make us that. But that is not what the Bible teaches. Now, this quest for happiness, this quest for fulfillment, for meaning in life, is a natural instinct, right? As I said before, everybody, every one of us is pursuing something in life, is trying to get something out of life. We are looking for that something that will bring satisfaction to our hearts. Right? Remember our younger days? Okay, many of you are still young, right? But if you are in my category, I'm already 52 this year. You remember that in your younger days, you're full of dreams, full of ideas, isn't it? Right? There's this zest for life. Oh, I got my bright future ahead of me. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to, reach this level by this age and all that. Back then, the rave was all about becoming a millionaire by age 30. Concepts like that. Okay. And then after that, our common experience is this, right? Life catches up. Life is complicated. Life is difficult. And soon you find these dreams and these ideas beginning to fade. Responsibilities start coming in. You have to learn how to sacrifice. You learn how to accept reality. You find ways, right, to cope and ultimately to be at peace with your disappointments. Because many of these dreams and ideals didn't come to pass. Right? You learn how to cope with that. You learn how to deal with the setbacks. And you carry on with life. This is a common approach and not a wrong approach. A very sensible approach, in fact. A very pragmatic, very practical approach. But if we can be truly honest, in those moments when we are quietly thinking about our lives, when we are reflecting upon it, whatever stage you are in, you will find that that desire, right, that dream, that aspiration, it never quite goes away. It's still there. The desire for what you set out in life to look for is still there. We've just learned how to bury it because we have to cope with life. But they don't go away. And then for those, you chase success and you experienced and tasted a bit of it, you want more. Why? Because the initial success didn't quite satisfy the way you thought it would, right? And you want more, and you want more, and you chase more, you work harder, you work longer, only to find at the end of the day, you still haven't found what you're looking for. If you look at the world today, people are either chasing, right, whatever that they are chasing, material or non-material, right, thinking that that thing that they are chasing is going to bring them the satisfaction, the fulfillment that they're looking for, right? Yeah, people who are like that, or people who have given up. People who have gone on the pursuit and met challenges after challenges and had their dreams taken away, dreams shattered, broken, whatever phrase you want to use it. And so they've given up. They decided that this thing that they're looking for, this it that they're looking for, can never be found. Okay. And that's why you see so many angry, frustrated, even cynical people around us today, isn't it? Especially people who have gone through a tougher life. Invariably, you'll find that they're not very happy. And so, back to the song title, back to the reason why I've chosen the title of the song as the title of my sermon. Now let me tell you just a little bit about the background. So as many of y'all know, this is an all-time classic rock song by the legendary band U2. And this song was the number 2 track in their most successful album to date. Those of you who know, the album is called The Joshua Tree. It was launched in 1987. It is a song that has very deep spiritual overtones in almost every song. All right. Now, we all know that U2 is a secular rock band. I love them. I love their music. My wife, loved their music. She, in fact, did a mini thesis during her study. She did mass communications for her university, and one of the mini thesis that she did was how this band used their music and their lyrics to communicate, right, their culture. They are Irish, and also to communicate their faith. They are all Christians, right? Not all Protestants. There are 1 or 2 Catholics in the band. Okay. So this is U2, right? They use their song to communicate their feelings, the struggles that they have in their journey as Christians. And so this song, this particular song, is really about that. It's about this deep spiritual yearning that they are experiencing. And those of you who know the song, roughly the lyrics go like this, right? I've climbed the highest mountains, I've run through the fields, I've scaled city walls, I've kissed honey lips, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So the idea of the song is that they've searched for this thing that they're looking for, whatever it may be, in many places and in many things. Right? Highest mountains and fields, you can relate that to career, fame, wealth. All right? Through great efforts, right? Running, crawling, scaling city walls, right? And trying to find it even in the non-material things, right? In romance or even in sex. Right? I've kissed honey lips. And yet, despite all of that, they still can't find what they're looking for. Now, but what is most interesting and most intriguing about the song to me lies actually in verse 3. Okay, and I flash verse 3 on screen for you. I'm not going to sing it. Not the last time. Every time I did that in the car, my wife would say, please stop butchering the song. Yeah. So I'm not going to do it and embarrass myself this morning, but I'm going to read the lyrics to you. And as you read the lyrics, you will begin to understand what I've been talking about so far. Right? Verse 3 goes as this: I believe in the kingdom come. Then all the colors will bleed into one. But yes, I'm still running. You broke the bonds and you lose the chains. Talking about Jesus here, right? Carry the cross of my shame, oh my shame, you know I believe it. You can see from the lyrics, right? This is written not by someone who just believes God exists, not a nominal Christian. It's written by someone who knows about the gospel, someone who appreciates what Jesus has done for them, someone who understands the gospel, and yet someone who is very honest about their struggle. You know, that even though I believe in God, even though I have my Christian faith, I'm still looking for this something that I still can't find. Those lyrics reflect the inner cry of a pilgrim. And if you think about it, we are all pilgrims, isn't it? Our discipleship journey is really a pilgrimage, a journey where we're trying to find God. Right? And this journey is often filled with ups and downs. It's often filled with, I really like how the frontman of the band, Bono, puts it, it's filled with running towards and running away from God. Right? And in this journey, we're all looking for something, that cry deep within our hearts. The cry that we will be able to hear whenever we take the time to deeply reflect right upon it. So, one of the reasons why I like this song so much also is this unpretentious honesty in the lyrics. They're being very honest about how they feel. And if we can be as honest, if we can be truly honest with ourselves, if we take the time to reflect and to look deep into our hearts, we will find these words, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, echoing within. Whichever stage of your life that you are right now in, there's this deep yearning inside us, and it's almost impossible to describe. And I'm going to try to describe it to you the best way I can based on my personal experience. Okay? And I will put it this way. It is this feeling that you have when, after saving up for a long time to buy that item that you've wanted, for some it's a pair of sneakers, for some it's a watch, whatever, maybe an iPhone, the latest one, I don't know. You save and you sacrifice to get there. Or it could be this promotion that you've been eyeing. You slog, you work, you please your boss, and then finally you get it. Or this person, that you've been secretly in love for a long time and you wish, that this person will agree to be your romantic partner. And voila, it happened. This person came into your life, and not only that, you managed to marry this person, okay? So you've been waiting a long time, you've been working very hard to get that thing that you want, and then after you get it, your heart goes, so like that only, This is what it's all about. Okay? I'm saying nothing about my marriage, all right? But I think you all understand what I'm saying, right? You look forward so much, to getting that thing. And once the thing come into your possession, not as shock as I thought it would be. That thing happens to us all the time, right? Whether be it in the context of material things, or be it in the context of position, even in the context of relationship, right? That the moment you get it, everything starts going downhill. Now, C.S. Lewis, famous Christian author, says it the best, and I'm going to read a relevant passage for you in his very famous book, Mere Christianity. How many of you have read the book? Wow, jialat, okay. It's not the easiest book to read, I would admit, but it is what I would consider essential reading for a Christian. All right, very, very important book. If you have the chance and the time, please try to read that book. It's not a very difficult book. It's not a very thick book. It's quite thin, right? But like I said, it's not the easiest book to read. So you have to take your time. So it's called Mere Christianity, and at chapter 10, C.S. Lewis says this: most people, if they had really learned to look into their own hearts, would know that they do want, and want acutely, something that cannot be had in this world. There are all sorts of things in this world that offer to give it to you, but they never keep their promise. The longings which arise in us when we first fall in love, or first think of some foreign country, or first take up some subject that excites us, these are longings which no marriages, no travel, and no learning can really satisfy. I am not now speaking of what would ordinarily be called unsuccessful marriages, or holidays, or learned careers. I'm speaking of even the best possible ones. There was something we grasped at, and in that first moment of longing, which just fades away in the reality. The spouse may be a good spouse, the hotels and scenery may have been excellent, and the job may have been very interesting, but something has evaded us. C.S. Lewis refers to romance, to travel, and to learning. Well, I know many of us probably don't share the kind of excitement towards learning as he did. But what he says is true, right? Of many, many things in our lives. That is the reality that we face. The things that we thought will bring us the joy, the satisfaction, the fulfillment, the moment we get them, it starts to fade. Another way that we can describe this feeling is this lingering sense of dissatisfaction that we have. Even though for all intents and purposes, for all practical purposes, we lack nothing. Our life is more or less complete. But still, there is something inside us that says, there must be more. There must be more about life. Life cannot be just about this. So this morning, we want to take a closer look at what is this deep yearning. How come it's there? And what it is, right? And we're going to look at how historically, right, and even in modern context, how mankind have tried to grapple with that yearning. Right? We're going to look at some ancient philosophies. We're going to look at some modern culture. Right? And then we're going to ask ourselves this question: can this thing that we're looking for ever be found? Can it ever be found? All right, so maybe I think it'll be helpful if the roadmap can be flashed on the screen right now. Okay, so what are we looking for? Right, we talk about this thing that we cannot quite describe. What exactly is it? Can this thing, can it ever be found? And finally, the most important part of my sermon, what does the Bible say about it? What does Jesus say about it? I mentioned earlier, the Bible says nothing about the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment, and meaning in life being the objective of life, right? So exactly what does the Bible say then? We're going to look into that. So this is going to be a two-part sermon. Today is part one, and in part one, I will dwell on points A and points B. And then I'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and that's where I will dive deep into point C, which is the most substantive and the most substantial point. All right? Now, Everyone ready now to jump into point A? Anyone lost this illusion already? Okay? No. Good. I know some of y'all may be thinking, this sounds like another heavy sermon, right? A lot of things to remember, a lot of things to think about. Actually, it's not that bad, right? Later on, as you listen, some of the things, if you hear already and don't quite understand them, you can throw it away, because I will explain the important parts to you in a simple way that you can take away this morning, all right? And then, let's just go into this first point first, right? Taking a deeper look into what is this thing that we're yearning for. I'm going to start with an article that I read recently in the Straits Times. And the title of this article is, can we have the next slide? Yeah. Okay. Singaporeans less happy, but those with balanced approach to life more satisfied. How many of you have read this article? Wow, jialat, don't answer. I don't know, maybe when I saw it, I thought, this is a very interesting title, but, well, apparently, most of you don't think that this is an interesting article enough. But anyway, since many of you haven't read it, good. Okay, I'm going to give you a very, very quick, a very brief summary of what the article is about. This article is basically about the results that they find in a survey. It's called the 2022 Quality of Life Survey. It is not a frivolous survey. It is conducted by the NUS Business School. In fact, it was taken so seriously that a team of academics from NUS have actually published a book based on the results of this survey, right? But of course, I haven't read the book. Probably don't intend to, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is that this is an important survey, and the finding is significant for us. Now, two major findings that the survey found. Okay, I'm going to read them for you. The first one is this. They found that Singaporeans have become less happy over the past decade. Less happy in the past 10 years. But those who embrace family and traditions, care about society, care about the environment, and at the same time they have money, they have social status, they were generally the most satisfied with life. First major finding. Second one, those who prioritize, material possessions and the finer things in life, they were the most unhappy, despite being better off financially. That means the rich ones were basically the unhappy ones. Now, the survey also ranked those who were happy, those who feel that they are satisfied with life. They ranked them, right? Remember the first group, the first finding of the survey says that Singaporean, those who embrace family traditions and social responsibility, and at the same time they have money and they have status, they are the most satisfied. So these were the groups that ranked first. All right? So these are the groups that see both as equally important, the material and the non-material things in life. And then you have the next group. Who are they? These are the pro-social group. So these are the ones who focus on family, on relationships, but at the same time also focus on social responsibility, right? Focus on making their life count towards improving the lives of others. But this group eschew materialism. That means this group believe that money is not important, right? I used to have a colleague who said this literally. We asked him, hey, why you join civil service? You're doing well in private practice, right? He said, I'm allergic to wealth. I said, wow, that's a terrible allergy to have. I never, yeah. So these are the people who rejected materialism, but they're not as happy as those who have both, right? They rank below. And then you have an even lower category. So these are the people who, yes, they prioritize family, they prioritize religion. I suspect there are some Christians there, right? And they prioritize family traditions, but they're not so focused on social responsibility. All right? So basically more the self, but the non-material things in life. And these are also people who eschew materialism, people who think that, it is pointless to go after wealth. And they are the third satisfied. And then we have the last group. Guess who are in the last group. The rich, right, basically. Right, those who prioritize materialism, right, and the final things in life, they were the least happy. That was what the survey found. So quite interesting article, right? You can go back and read it if you are interested. Now, 2 weeks after that article, I chanced upon another article, also in the Straits Times. And this time, it is an article commenting on that article, right? Commenting on the results of the survey. And one of the most interesting comment in that article is this. It says that countries who had risen from poverty, right, through rapid and dynamic growth, sounds very familiar, right? That's us. Countries like that tend to espouse more materialistic values than countries who have been wealthy for long. And that situation is similar at the individual level. That means children who grew up from a poor background tends to demonstrate a higher level of materialism when they grow up. And so one of the very poignant point that the writer of the article made was this, that the effect of poverty is not just the distress that it brings through lack, through scarcity, but it also fosters values that ultimately leads to less happiness and less satisfaction in life. So that's the real impact of poverty. Not just the lack and scarcity itself, but in the kind of values that it promotes. And when I read the article, well, quite obviously, the writer had in mind also, right, the experience of Singapore. Singapore is basically a country that started from nothing. Right? And if you are in my vintage, right, in your 50s or older, excuse me, or even just slightly younger, you will recall a time where many of your friends are not rich. In fact, most are not well-to-do. Right? Most are quite poor even. But today, most of us are middle class. Right? Some of us even doing better than that. So many of us grew up from that humble background. And personally, I can tell you, for my case, the word humble is a serious understatement. I grew up in an environment which many will consider poor and difficult. Right? My dad passed away when I was 5. He was the sole breadwinner. My mom had to come out and work. She was not educated. All she could find was a job as a washerwoman, tough job, and that pays really, really meagerly. All right? House was just a square room with toilet at the corner. You don't have, a bedroom and a living room. Some of you've done CP at Block 174. You've seen some of these so-called one-room rental flats. But those look luxurious compared to the one-room rental flats, that we used to have in the past. Right? So that was the background. And we had barely enough to survive. There were nights where we had to go hungry because the paycheck haven't come in yet. Right? So that's the background that I grew up in. And many were just slightly better off, barely making the ends meet. And so many of us work hard, right? As a country, we work very hard to try and improve our lives. We were motivated and driven by scarcity, by lack, and sometimes even just, to survive. That was the psyche of many of us. So this pursuit of economic and material wealth became a priority to many Singaporeans. And this was really not too far ago. Remember the 5 C's? How many of y'all remember the 5 C's? Okay, can y'all tell me what are the 5 C's? Cash, condo, car, credit card. The last one not so fashionable nowadays. Country club. Right? I mean, those of you who have your country club membership, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that the thing has depreciated so much over the years. Yeah. But yeah, 5 C's, right? They occupy the national psyche. To many Singaporeans, the 5 C's represented wealth, status, and the promise of a good life, isn't it? And many work hard to chase that, including yours truly here. We're all gunning for the 5C. If cannot get 5, never mind, 4 also good. Right? And so we work so hard, and we work long hours, and work was sacrosanct to so many of us. Sacrosanct means it is the most important thing in life. Everything else is secondary. When I have to work, I have to work. My family, put aside first. Church, put aside first. Everything put aside first. Work first, all right? Because 5 C's. I want to get the 5 C's. And then now fast forward to 2022, you see the survey. What does the survey tells us? It says, those who had chased the 5 C's effectively, right, thinking that was the pathway to success, to happiness, to fulfillment, they ended up being the least happy. They ended up being less happy, right, than those who didn't chase those 5 C's. Now, from the survey itself, which also tells us, right, that the most satisfied group were not those who just embrace materialism, but those who see both as equally important. The non-material things in life and materialism, just as important. That's why they are the most satisfied. Okay, from that result, maybe we can say, wow, we have become wiser, right? Singaporeans have become wiser. We learned that money does not bring the happiness we seek. We need to look at our families, our relationships, our social responsibility. We look at the non-material things in life. Right. But it's interesting also, if you look at the result, that while the group that balances these two were the most satisfied, the groups below that, right, these were the groups who eschewed materialism. These were the groups who were smart to begin with, right, to say that money is not everything. All right, and they pursue these non-material aspects. But you realize that they are not quite as satisfied as well. So what does this tell us? Does it mean then that the goal to happiness, fulfillment, right, and satisfaction in life is really just that, a balancing act? You must balance, the non-material things. Those are important to you, your family, your relationships. Right? You need to do your part to make other people's lives better. But at the same time, you also need to be rich. You also need to have a good income, and you also need to have your 5 C's. So is that the formula then? Is that the solution to our quest for happiness, for fulfillment, for meaning? That you have all these non-material things, and yet at the same time, you are rich enough to afford the 5 C's. Then life will be complete. Personally, I'm not so sure about that. Right? Firstly, this group may be the most satisfied, but it doesn't say anything about whether this group feels satisfied. Whether this group feel that inner yearning that they are looking for has been met through what they have accomplished in their lives. Maybe this is just a process of the pursuit, isn't it? We started off poor, so our natural instinct tells us you need money. Right? So we work hard for that, we get a good income, we succeeded materially. And then we realized that, hey, this so-called thing that is supposed to bring us happiness has actually made us even more unhappy now. So we look at other things. We look at families, we look at all these other non-material aspects. And then we realize that, hey, actually, yeah, they do bring us joy, but I also need my money. Otherwise I cannot survive. So I see it as just a progress, a natural progress, right, in our quest, right, for this thing that we're looking for. And now we're at the stage where we realize that money is not going to cut it. We need both, but what's the next stage? Does it mean that that's it? We found the solution to our age-old problem, how to find satisfaction in our lives. I believe we're not there yet, right? And in fact, later on in the sermon, you will begin to hear that maybe it's not something that we can ever find in this life, okay? But back to this part of my sermon, I think even as we're thinking about our pursuit, right, for happiness, for fulfillment, for meaning, we have to see it in the context of reality, isn't it? And reality is not a pretty picture. Life is difficult. Life is not free from trouble. Life is challenging, even here in sunny Singapore. We have read so much, right, about how Singapore is a place that many people want to come, not just to work, but to live as well as to raise their children. Right? And it is a fact. People are fighting, right, for opportunities to come here to work, fighting to get their PRs, And you know how difficult it is to get a Singapore citizenship nowadays. But yet, in this part of the world where everybody wants to come, we have our problems. Very, very real and difficult problems. Let's start with mental health. Recently, our PM-to-be mentioned it. You know, when it is a subject that the PM-to-be has to address the nation on, you know it is a big subject. You know it is a big issue. Mental health among our people, especially among our youth, that's a growing problem. And then, of course, we read about crimes, domestic violence especially, sometimes even violence committed against very young children, very disturbing there. And you've got a lot of angry people on the roads, right? All the honking and shouting and all that. So this is not a place where everything is perfect, and hunky-dory and rosy. We have our challenges. Even though at the same time we have many, many good things going on in Singapore. Like, for example, we're going to have Taylor Swift coming here. We're the only country in this part of the world that has managed to host her. Let's look at the rest of the world. It's a mess, isn't it? Right? To say the least. The wars that are going on, the many social dysfunctions that we read about, all kinds of injustice, persecution, oppression, corruption. The world is a mess. So what does the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment, and meaning in life mean in this context? In the midst of all this chaos, in the midst of all this trouble, what does it mean? Does it even mean anything anymore? Now let's take a step back. Happiness, fulfillment, meaning, all these can exist at different levels, isn't it? At the lowest level, it's about, like what I mentioned earlier, buying that thing that you've been saving up for, right, and getting that initial satisfaction at least, right, when you acquire it. So that can be the lowest level of happiness and fulfillment. And then after that, you have the next level, the success that you experience in career, right, the status that come with it, the joy of having a happy family and a fulfilling relationship and so on and so forth. So that's the next level. But then there is also this higher level, this deeper level, that we're looking for. This cry in our heart that there must be something more in life. And that must make sense in the context of where we are in the world today. The reality, the trouble, the chaos. So what we are really looking for is this deep satisfaction that abides in us through life's ups and downs. That in the midst of all this chaos and all these upheavals in our lives, we can still find that satisfaction. And of course, the big question is, can this be found? Can this deep yearning ever be met? This brings me to my second point, can it be found? Right? Now, the pursuit of happiness and the quest for fulfillment and meaning in life, this has been the central pursuit of human beings throughout history. Nothing new. Every human being in every part of history have been looking for that. Let's start by looking at the phrase, pursuit of happiness. You must be wondering, who started it, right? Who coined the phrase? Who came up with this phrase called pursuit of happiness? Well, it started by an English philosopher. His name is John Locke, L-O-C-K-E. He lived in the 17th century, a long, long time ago. And this phrase, it really became famous after it got adopted in a very important document to the USA. It's called the United States Declaration of Independence, right? It is one of the founding documents of the country. When before USA became USA, they were basically different colonies of the British Empire. Pretty much most countries, most places outside the UK were colonies of UK, or some of the European countries. So there were these 13 states who were formerly colonies of the British Empire, and they decided, with enough, they got fed up, right, as many colonies did. Right? They got fed up with the British Empire, with the UK rules, so they fought a war. right? And they won, and they decided, we're not going to be British colonies anymore, we will be independent. Right? So they came out with this document, the United States Declaration of Independence, and along with it, the Constitution of America. Right? And that's how Singapore started as well. When we became independent, there were two important documents. One is, of course, the Constitution, and the other one, the Independence Act. Right? So these are what we call founding documents of a country. These are documents that sets the identity of the country. It sets the direction that the country wants to move towards, and all laws and policies that the government subsequently enacts, right, or come up with, is governed by these founding documents. So this phrase, pursuit of happiness, is found in a constitutional document of the US. Right? Of course, Thomas Jefferson was the one who drafted that, and that document came up in 1776. And I'm going to read the second paragraph of the declaration to you. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." There you have it, the pursuit of happiness. And of course, the document goes on to say, how the role of the government is to secure these rights and to ensure, that they create the environment for such a pursuit to take place. So you see, the pursuit of happiness is a documented national aspiration, right, of one of the greatest countries in the world, the United States. But if we look at the United States today, and I mean no offense to anyone here, would you associate the word happiness with American society? I don't think so. In fact, I think the Americans themselves have stopped doing that. There used to be a time where every American, and even people outside America, right, they were chasing the American dream. Heard of that? Right? And a huge component of that really is about having a lot of money. The thinking in America today is veering away from that. They've realized that this pursuit of happiness is really, at the end of the day, a pipe dream for many. So they're beginning to abandon this notion, and they are now moving towards a more pragmatic approach. They are basically telling themselves, you know what, I'm unhappy, but it's okay. It's okay. There are important things in life that I need to take care of. Let me just focus on that. There is actually an article that very succinctly summarizes this thinking that's going on right now. And it's a Bloomberg article. Those of you who are interested, it's an article written by this writer called Andreas Kluth, K-L-U-T-H, Andreas Kluth. And the title is, "Don't Worry About Being Happy." It's a play on the song, "Don't Worry, Be Happy." And in the article, he says that song has led many people into trouble. So he came out with this thesis and said that it's not about being happy. So don't worry about being happy. Right? You can read the article. Very, very interesting read. Definitely worth your time and not very long. Okay. So this move of Americans from the pursuit of happiness to a more pragmatic approach, actually this is nothing new, This is something that has been taking place throughout history. There have been many, many ancient Western philosophies. By Western, I mean during that time, mainly Greek and Roman, right? Mainly Greek, and the Europeans were still barbarians, right? They're still killing animals and all that. So the civilization actually took place, right, amongst the Greeks, among the Romans, the Persians, and all that, and so on and so forth. So they have actually been coming up with philosophies to deal with this struggle, that on one hand, I'm looking for this deep satisfaction, I'm looking for happiness, I'm looking for fulfillment, I'm looking for meaning, but yet at the same time, I have very real troubles to deal with. Back then, they were facing issues like disease, war, famine, troubles that affect their lives. So many philosophies came out, many philosophers there, obviously, and one of them is this philosophy called Stoicism. Stoicism. How many of you all have heard of this phrase, Stoicism? Right? I see some hands, better than first service. Yeah, first service, give me the blank stare. It's me, like. Yeah. Well, big word and all that, but actually, as I explain more, you'll realize that actually many of us are Stoics without even realize that there's such a philosophy called Stoicism. Okay. So what is Stoicism? It is an ancient Greek philosophy started back in 300 BC, 300 BC, before even Jesus Christ came. And this is what the Stoics believe. They believe that we should learn to accept that there are things in life we cannot control and focus instead on the things that we can. Sound familiar? Once you accept that life is going to be hard and frustrating, you can lead a more balanced and meaningful life. Sound familiar? So a Stoic's response to you two would likely be something like this, right? The song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So this is what a Stoic will tell, right, to the band. So you still haven't found what you're looking for because what you are looking for cannot be found. You're wasting your time. Forget about your desires. This deep yearning that you're talking about, forget about it. It's just an illusion. It doesn't exist. Life is tough. So you got to be strong. You got to face life's challenges head on. Don't attach your heart to anything. Don't get sentimental. Don't get emotional. You're just going to find misery at the end. Be pragmatic. Be strong. Don't look to things. Don't look to your career. Don't look to people for happiness. Just deal with life. I believe there are many people who have lived their lives like that, isn't it? Maybe some of you here, that has been your outlook all this time. Especially those of you who have gone through difficulties in life, gone through very big challenges. The sensible, rational conclusion is, life sucks, but let's face it. You are a Stoic without even realizing that there's such a thing called Stoicism. I was a Stoic before I read about Stoicism. I told you about my poor background, right? But you know, as a kid, I never grew up asking questions like, oh, how come my daddy got to pass away so early? You know, how come my family had to be so poor? How come he can afford the toy? I don't ask stupid questions like that. You know, at that time, by God's grace, I just happened to be good at studying, you know. And I don't mean to brag, all right? And at that time, I think studying was really the only thing that I was good at. You know, class race, I always come in last. Nobody asked me to be in their football team. So I was just basically a nerd, you know, who was pretty good at studying. And I believe that was my ticket, you know, out of my situation. So I just focus on that. I don't ask questions like, why this, why that? Let's just study hard, and I know that it's going to lead me to a good career, and thankfully it did. So I was being a Stoic without realizing, you know, that I was one. So that's Stoicism, right? They believe that we should just stop wasting time pursuing our deepest desires. And this approach actually is not very different from another group, right? The Buddhists. And here I have to tread very carefully. Right? Someone just reminded me that, hey, second service broadcast, you better be careful about this point. Okay. And I know some of you here, you know, you may have been ex-Buddhist or even our guests here, you are currently practicing Buddhist. So please pardon me, right, if all of this sounds like an oversimplification. I don't mean any disrespect to the faith. Right? My understanding of the faith is limited. I will really readily acknowledge that. And the reason why I have to mention this is because it is very relevant, right, to what I wanted to share, and it's very relevant in our society, especially in Singapore as well, right? Buddhist thoughts are things that many Singaporeans subscribe to and live their lives according to. So, what do the Buddhists believe? And pardon me if this is not exactly accurate or overly simple, but I'm just trying to make a point here, all right? So Buddhism basically teaches, firstly, that the root cause of suffering is human desire, right? Some of you may have heard this, and the Buddhist solution to that, in order to escape suffering, is this, that we must disentangle ourselves from human desires. And you do that for a long enough time, maybe multiple lifetimes, you will achieve nirvana, right? That's what the ultimate goal of Buddhism is. Right? True Buddhism doesn't involve, deities and other idols and all that. Buddhism is actually very philosophical. Okay, so this is what they believe. They believe that if you pursue happiness in things, if you allow your lives to be governed by your desires, then you're going to end up with this thing called the unquenchable thirst. That's what you're going to end up with. All right, so their solution is disentangle from human desires, and that's how you get yourself out of this cycle of suffering and so on and so forth. So that's Buddhism. Now there's also another well-known ancient Greek philosophy. It has a very big name. It's called Epicureanism. Epicureanism. Wow, very big, right? Sounds very complicated, right? Actually, after you hear what they believe in, you will say, oh, this one I also know. Right? The Epicureanism basically teaches this. Let's eat, let's drink, and let's be merry, for tomorrow we die. That is basic Epicureanism. There is no other meaning in life. Life exists so that we can seek the maximum pleasure from things, from relationships, from sex. And then after that, that's it. That's all there is. There is no God. Now, this philosophy came out in Greece, of course, ancient Greece. And ancient Greece, they have this plethora of ancient gods, right? Your Zeus, your Hermes, and all that. So they believe that the gods, they exist, but they don't really care. They don't really care about, what happens in the human domain. So let's just live our life and enjoy our lives. Right, so to them, life is about just indulging, in whatever pleasures that you can find. And again, very familiar sounding, isn't it? Right? In the modern days, you hear about things like, YOLO, you only live once. Let's just go for it. Let's just enjoy. Let's get the maximum thrill, the maximum joy. Epicureanism. So these are ancient philosophies, and I mentioned even an ancient religion as well, trying to grapple with this quest in the context of the realities of life. What about modern culture? What about our modern world, our modern society? How do they grapple with that? Quite obviously, the pursuit is still very much alive and kicking, but people are approaching it slightly differently. Okay, in modern society tells us, and you can glean this. In fact, you can see it quite blatantly, right? In the commercials that you see, in the movies, in the songs, in all of pop culture that pervades our society, that engulfs us. There is always this very, very dominant message that your happiness is entirely up to you. You can be whatever you want to be. You can be whoever you want to be. Your life is in your hands. You can achieve whatever you set out to achieve. Isn't it? You see a lot of that. You hear a lot of that. That is really, if you ask me, a very positive and empowering lie, isn't it? All of us know that that is simply not the case. But yet, you'll be surprised that so many in our modern society subscribes to that and actually believe in that. The Bloomberg article that I mentioned earlier? In the article, the author spoke about this phenomenon. It's called happycracy. Right? Think democracy, happycracy. Right? Something that he calls toxic positivity. Right? That he observed is pervading American society right now. Right? And toxic positivity basically says this. It basically says that the onus of not just pursuing, but actually catching up with happiness falls on the individual person. If you're not happy, you must be doing something wrong. If you're not happy, you must be living your life wrong. Okay. If you're not happy, it's your own fault. You haven't worked hard enough. You haven't snatched at the opportunities. You haven't gotten to know the right people. It's all you. This kind of thinking is very dangerous. You're just setting up yourself for failure, isn't it? That is really the only outcome that will come with this kind of thinking that I am the master of my fate. I am going to go out there and get what I want to get. Because reality is going to catch up with you. Reality is going to tell you, that is not going to happen. So you have a lot of people with broken dreams, angry, frustrated, right? They blame themselves. Yeah, it must be my fault. I haven't tried hard enough. Or they begin to blame society. Right? I was born in the wrong echelon of society. I was born in the wrong family. And born to the wrong dad, not having the right connection. And this is very relevant right now because if you look at what is happening across the world, and I hope it never ever come to Singapore, it's this phenomenon of youngsters having slogged their whole life, right, to get to university, to get their degrees, and even some beyond, right, masters and all, only to find that they have no job. See, to them, it's not even a case of shattered dreams. It's a case of, I don't even have the chance to start. I don't even have the chance, to run this race. So if you subscribe to this belief, that you have everything within you, right, to achieve what you want, then you're in for a hard time. You're going to be so angry, so frustrated, so disappointed, and so cynical and disillusioned. And then there are those who, they will keep pursuing and pursuing and pursuing, right? Thinking that, okay, I've managed to get this, now let's go for the next one. Let's go for the next thing. Let's go for the next level, the next position. Each time not finding what they're looking for. And so you end up living a life that is just so driven and so tiring, isn't it? So this is what modern society is influencing us. This is what modern society is moving us towards, right? Thinking that it is the self that is going to bring the happiness that we seek. And of course, natural consequence, you see a lot of angry people around, a lot of frustrated people around, a lot of disillusioned people around. And C.S. Lewis actually has a term for these people. He calls these people, same book, same chapter, right? Chapter 10, Mere Christianity. He says, these are disillusioned, sensible men. Okay, a disillusioned, sensible man, according to C.S. Lewis, is someone who would say, by the time you get to my age, you would have given up chasing the rainbow's end. Sounds familiar? Maybe it's even something that you have said to a younger person. You're idealistic now. When you're my age, then you know what life is. All right? So, the approach by this illusion sensible man is not wrong. It makes perfect sense. If you take God out of the equation, right, you have this quest, and then you have this reality that you have to grapple with. What is the sensible solution if you hit a flat wall? It's this, right? So you become disillusioned, you come to a point where you start to ask yourself, maybe all this is for nothing, right? It's a pie in the sky. You're never ever going to get it. But C.S. Lewis also asks, what if one can really reach the rainbow's end? What if we can really find it? What if the satisfaction we yearn for deep in our hearts can, in fact, be found? Now, if that is the case, then our sensible approach, our rational approach, our pragmatic approach will end up achieving nothing except to stifle us, isn't it? Except to deny us this satisfaction that can, in fact, be found. So this brings me to the end of my second point and also the end of my message today. Some of y'all may be feeling a little bit like, wow, how come hang me in the air like that, Come back in 2 weeks' time. I'll be back here in 2 weeks' time, right, to wrap up my message by diving deep into point C, which is what does Jesus and what does the Bible say. But don't worry, I'm going to give you a slight sneak preview just to whet your appetite a bit, to make sure that you come back. Okay, but before I do that, let me just wrap up, okay? So this morning we have, we've looked at this question, right, of the quest for happiness, for fulfillment, for meaning in life. And this is a search that occupies the hearts and minds of mankind throughout history. It's not something that we talk too much about, because we're all so busy in life, but it is something that we have to reflect upon, we have to think about. Because this is something that comes to us almost instinctively as a human. And therefore, it has a huge ramification on your spiritual walk, right, on your discipleship journey. Now, many in this world, including Christians, look to things, material and non-material, right, in their search for this happiness, for fulfillment, and for meaning. And many, if not all, end up not finding it. This feeling of dissatisfaction in our hearts, this feeling that there must be something more, continues to linger. And the result for many is frustration, disillusionment. Historically, man has come up with many philosophies, right, to rationalize this desire with the reality that they face, the troubles and chaos of the world. And some of these philosophies, they adopted a pragmatic approach. We need to be strong, we need to be practical, and let's stop thinking about our desires. And then you have the other extreme where life is just about maximizing our pleasures. Whatever desires that you feel, those are real, those are legitimate. Let's just feed them and let's just enjoy life. Okay? And then you have modern society that tells us that we are the masters of our own fate. We are, the instruments of our own success. So this is what we've looked at. And now we're at this point where we want to ask ourselves, what does the Bible say? What does Jesus say? And here's the sneak preview, right? I mentioned earlier that the Bible actually says nothing about the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment, and meaning in life as our life goal. Jesus didn't say, come to me and I will fulfill, your biggest dreams, your deepest ideals. Come to me, I will help you fulfill all of those. No, that is not what Jesus said. In fact, Jesus said that we have to die to ourselves in order to actually live. So I believe, even on top of that, what Jesus said to us, right, and another very important part of his message is this: come to me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And this concept of rest doesn't just start at the New Testament, in the Old Testament. Right? When God created the world, he meant for us to live in a state of rest with him. The kingdom of earth and the kingdom of heaven were meant to coexist. Man sinned, we fell away from that, and God has been on this quest to restore the original state. You read about in the Old Testament, God bringing the Israelites out of Egypt to bring them to the promised land, flowing with milk and honey, where he wanted to give them rest. And that's why in Hebrews 4, right, you read that the Israelites disobeyed God back then, and that's why they couldn't enter into God's rest, but there remained a rest that we believers can enter into, that we believers should be diligent, right, to ensure that we enter into that rest. So I'm looking for the word. I think suggest is not the right word. I'm going to say, right, that our life goal as a Christian, the goal in life of every Christian is not to find fulfillment, satisfaction, meaning, but it is to find God's rest. It is to find God's rest. All right? I'm going to unpack that in 2 weeks' time, so do come back if you are still interested. Okay? And I'm going to leave you with a piece of homework. All right? Yeah, very simple, right? And you have 2 weeks to do it. And you don't have to hand it up. So at the end of the day, whether you do it or not, that is between you and God. So I'm going to leave you with 2 questions. And I hope that in the next 2 weeks, you take some time to think about it. And it's probably something that you need more than just one sitting, to be able to fully mull over it and then chew over it, because it requires you to think about your life. All right, so the first question is this: are you presently chasing something in your life? What would that be? And why are you chasing it? How would you react if something happens and you are no longer able to pursue that thing? Whatever that thing may be. Okay, first question. I figure many young people will be in that phase of their life now where they are chasing stuff. I also want to acknowledge that there are some young people, you've graduated and you are struggling to find a job and all that. For you, maybe the second question will be more relevant. All right, but First question, all right, those of you who are chasing something, be it a career, or be it a partner, be it marriage, whatever that may be, or even something, that is more relevant towards a social cause, you're pursuing your passion. Why are you chasing that? Next group, you used to have your dreams, your aspirations, your ideals, but life has caught up with you, and you have had to give up on them. How are you feeling now? I'm not inviting you to a pity party. I'm not asking you to go back and feel so sorry about yourself. Oh, my life is full of broken dreams. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I want all of us to take the time to actually look at how life has affected us. What has life done to our hearts? What has all these disappointments and frustrations done to you? Has it made you a person that is hardened? A person who is cynical? A person who can no longer find joy in life, but still moving on strong because you have to? All right, and this question may be relevant, right, to some of you young people where you find that life is unfair. You work so hard, you graduated, and you still can't find a job. I think you all read in the news, right? While more graduates are able to find higher paying jobs, there are lesser number who can find a job to begin with. Okay, and I hope that this doesn't escalate into what you are seeing in China, right, where you hear of phenomena like Bai Lan and Tan Ping and all that. It's basically young people who got disillusioned because they weren't even given a chance to start. And maybe more recently you read about the protest and the strike by the young trainee doctors in Korea, and some of you may be thinking, how can they be so irresponsible? But if you read a little bit more, they have been exploited, overworked, and underpaid. And if I'm them, I'd probably be asking, I've slogged so hard to get my medical degree. Is this what it's all about? So young people, some of you may be feeling like that. So I want you to, in the next 2 weeks, search your heart, right? Look at how you're responding to this. Are you feeling angry, and all that? And as you process, after you process that, then you come in 2 weeks' time. Okay, I believe then you'll be ready to hear what I have to share about what Jesus actually said, what the Bible actually says, right, about this aspect of finding fulfillment, happiness, and meaning in life. All right, so shall we just commit this time to the Lord? Let's pray. Father, we want to thank you for the message this morning. Thank you that, Lord, you are helping us to reflect deeper into how we are living our lives. And in our midst here, there are many of us who have gone through various experiences, who are currently going through various experiences. Some of us may be chasing whatever we are chasing in life. Some of us may have met with failures and disappointments and setbacks. But whatever it is, Lord, I ask that this morning as they hear your message, and in the next 2 weeks, as they reflect upon the message, that you'll begin to speak to them. Holy Spirit, begin to show them the condition of their hearts. Begin to show us the condition of our hearts, Lord, as we think about some of these things that we have talked about this morning. And Lord, I ask that even as we search the Bible for answers, you will begin to point the way to us, to show us as well. So Lord, in the coming weeks, Lord, I pray that you will take us all through this journey of reflection, this journey of self-discovery, Lord. Lord, I want to also pray for my brothers and sisters that as they depart from this place, that as they begin their week, that your blessings will be upon them, your favor will shine upon them, and that they will experience your presence wherever they are, whatever that they do, Lord, in the week ahead. And all this we pray in Jesus' mighty name. Everyone say, Amen.